I realized that what I've been doing all my life is negotiating with people or institutions that are more powerful than I am. And then I realized that that's true of all of us. Anybody who is a creative, anybody who's a designer, anybody who is an artist, anybody who's an inventor. I mean, I'm connected to Maker House now in Seattle. They did my book party for me, very nice. We're all negotiating with people who have more money than we do, more power than we do, and that's one of the reasons it makes us so damn nervous. There's a good reason it makes us nervous. They've got all the power. So that's now the way I think of what I'm trying to do, is help people be more skilled in negotiating with those who have more power and getting what you need out of the deal. That's my goal. I just picked this up. This is a designer named Lisa Condon, and this was a great saying. Talent is cheaper than salt. What separates the talented individual from the successful one is a lot of hard work. Stephen King. And I thought, you can't negotiate if you haven't done the hard work and have the skills to actually have something to be worthwhile to negotiate over. So this is a premise for everything I'm saying about. My assumption is that you have something that you've worked hard at, that you're skilled at, that is in fact worth the money. So you can't do it without that. That's absolutely underlying all this. And I fell in love with that little thing. This was in Fast Company a couple days ago. I immediately wanted to copy it. Feeling comfortable is incredibly important in negotiations. So if you are in control of the environment, offering them a warm cup of tea, a cup of coffee, seated in a comfortable chair, there's been research on this. You will achieve more in your negotiation if your opposite feels comfortable and relaxed and trusting and safe. And there's nothing like, according to the research, there's nothing like holding a warm cup of coffee or tea in your hands to kind of mellow you out. It's just a feeling of security. It's really powerful. Comfort. Being comfortable in a situation which is full of potential anxieties. It's got a difficult conversation. In fact, there's a great book that I use all the time, Difficult Conversations. And it's about the idea of how to deal with your opposite in difficult conversations. But comfort, underlying level of comfort is incredible, important. And remembering that feelings trump logic every time. Every time. We are feeling people, and we use our logic after we react with our feelings. And I'm going to tell you a story about myself. I was getting ready to go down to California to do a talk to a bunch of foster kids. I was a foster kid. And I know from personal experience that those things that happen to you when you're young last forever. I mean, your childhood, everybody's got a childhood, and it lasts forever with you, okay? So I'm listening to the radio, NPR naturally, and they're telling, there's a woman being interviewed at the Seattle Zoo about the controversy over the elephants. And the elephants are in captivity, and when they're in captivity, they lose weight, they don't have any babies, they're unhappy, they get depressed, clearly depressed, and I could barely stand it. I could barely stand it. I mean, I started crying, shaving to go to the airport over the elephant story, because when I was little, I felt like I was in captivity. And then I remembered when the Sisters Magdalene movie was made, and Carolyn and I went to the movie. I couldn't watch the movie. I had to get up and leave the movie because I felt so strongly about how these girls felt when they were in this captive environment. It was just the captivity of it just hit me like a ton of bricks. Those anxieties are under me, and yours are under you all the time. And when you're in a situation where your emotions are being pushed, like a negotiation situation, your opposite can tap into those things to your detriment. So where do those feelings originate? They originate in our childhood. We all had a childhood. It doesn't matter how awful or how fabulous your childhood was. The fact is you got it and it's there. So I was always desperate for connections. I'll tell you another quick story about myself. In the second grade, I have 2 second grade stories. They're totally the opposite. In the second grade, the teacher was and this is, I took this when I was in the 5th grade. I was in this portable in the second grade. Maple School in Seattle, long gone. Teacher was coming out after lunch carrying all the milk money from lunch, and she tripped and fell, and she dropped all the money on the pavement. And 2 of the cool boys in my second grade class went running over there and picked up the change as fast as they could, and I joined them, and we all grabbed the money, and we ran to the corner candy store. Okay? Now I knew that this was going to end in disaster. There was no way that we were going to get away with this. Everybody saw us. We didn't help the teacher. We stole the money. Off we go to the candy store. We buy the candy. We come back. And, of course, in those days, they spanked. I got spanked. They got spanked. And, you know, but why did I do that?
Did you get to eat the candy?
Of course, yeah. I didn't do it to eat the candy. I did it to form the connection with those 2 boys. I wanted to be in the gang. I wanted to be in the gang. Is so powerful that I knew that it was insane, but it was worth it for the moment to get to be in the gang. Okay. And let's see if the next slide. Yeah, so the artist slide. Did I spell that right?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. So also in the second grade, we were drawing for Columbus Day, and I drew the Nina the Pinta and the Santa Maria. It's stories in the book. And the teacher praised my art, and my heart went pitter-pat, and it totally shaped my life because somehow I knew from that moment that art was going to save me, that it was going to get me out of this. Somehow the art was going to save me. And I have a feeling, in fact, I've talked to lots of my clients and students and stuff about this, that that's very, very common, that we creatives relate to the world through the work that we do. And that relationship to that work was very early in our lives, very early in our lives. And we were not typically, I'm sure there's an exception here, we were not typically the class president or in with the in crowd or the most popular. We were the artist who got our praise through the art that we did, the music that we did, some kind of creative activity, the invention that we made. Which of course lays the groundwork for a career, but it doesn't make you be a great negotiator, as my next story will tell you. The bicycle wheel. Looking for connection, knowing disaster was certain. There's a theme here. So one day I was in my living room, and it was in the summer, and I was in my parents' home, and there was a kid who I knew as the bully in my class, and I don't know how old I was when this happened, and my house was across from St. George's School, a Catholic school, and they had a bank that went down to the playground, a dirt bank, and it was bare, and the kids on 11, must have been 11th, were rolling this bicycle tire down the bank, and it would bounce and roll, and they would laugh and carry on, and then they would go get it, and they would bring it up there, and they'd roll it down again. And my dad said to me, came in and he saw him doing this, and he thought it was horrible because they were going to waste this bicycle wheel. And he said, here's 2 bits, that's 25 cents. Go over there and buy that wheel off of them. I knew it was hopeless. The money, I don't know if it was the money, it was the bully, it was the class bully that was doing this, and there was no way he was going to sell me that bicycle wheel. But I took the deal because I wanted that connection. I wanted that connection. So I went over to negotiate, and of course it didn't work, and I walked back. But the experience of walking purposely across the field to do the negotiation, I was like connected to my old man, and I was like a dude, and I was going to go make this thing happen, even though I knew it wasn't going to happen. I'm not going to tell that story. Okay, so what to do about this? What to do about it? when you're negotiating. Because this doesn't give you a great basis for confidence when you're negotiating. Well, the first thing is you've got to understand the vulnerabilities. So you can't ignore them. So my personal experience is I know this stuff about me, I'm like ready. So I plan my way around it. I prepare, I take the time to plan. I make notes. I think about the other person and what they're looking for. I think about the larger issues of what I can do for them and how and what might be their interests beyond the obvious issues. I'll talk about that a little bit more. I build on my strengths. I know what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. So I focus on the things I'm good at. I don't focus on trying to improve the things that I'm terrible at because it's hopeless. I focus on trying to improve the things I'm good at. And I remember my accomplishments. Back when I was still running the design business, I carried in my pocket I would carry a little folded up piece of paper and I would list accomplishments, project accomplishments. I would list, we just did the annual report for the phone company. We just did the identity program for Fisher. We just did whatever it was. I would make a list to remind myself of those accomplishments so when the anxieties would hit, I might not have to even look at it. The fact that I wrote it down helped me remember the accomplishments. And I made these lists all the time. I'd make them 2-3 times a week. And sometimes it'd be the same things on it every time. But it would help me remember what I accomplished to feel confident. Because for me, my confidence comes from accomplishments. That's not true of everyone, but for me, that's where my confidence comes from. So I remember the advantages that I have. I can draw. And I'm very focused on learning and improving. And frankly, one of the real motivators in writing the book and writing the stories was understanding negotiation myself. Because there's nothing like teaching to help you grasp a subject. Yep.
What did you do to really pinpoint your strengths and build off of those?
When I close deals that have fairly large money with them for the time, maybe it's $2,000 at one point, and then maybe it's $200,000 at another point. But at that point in time, that gave me a real sense of accomplishment. And then the other thing that I knew was that I'm very good at summarizing the need, and I'm going to talk about that a bit, about concise statements here in a few minutes. But so I knew, was the question, how did I know what I was good at? Yeah. I knew always that I was good at summarizing something in just a few sentences so the other person would understand and recognize me with some expertise. Yeah. But it was a learned thing. I learned that. It wasn't magic. It was learned. Confidence. Oh, where does confidence come from? Oh, okay. Maybe you've seen this. This is current. This was like last month's issue of The Atlantic. And I keep forgetting their names. Kathy Kay and Claire Shipman. Claire is an ABC News reporter and freelancer. She gets to the New York Times quite a bit. And Claire, or Kathy, I get them mixed up all the time, is the BBC reporter we see just before the evening news on Channel 9. And they've written a book about confidence, and the article promoting the book was in The Atlantic. Fabulous article. Tons of research on the problems of lack of confidence. Now, they're very focused on improving the position that women have in the world in terms of confidence. But in my experience and in my clients, the men in the creative world have much of the same problems that are described in this article, and I certainly do. And so I really recommend reading the article, if not buying the book. But the thing that I thought was most interesting about it was the idea that what confidence actually is. Confidence is what turns thoughts into action. When you feel confident, and this was on the last page of this article, when you feel confident, you then feel okay about turning your ideas into action, saying what you're going to say, making what you're going to make, taking that little leap, taking the big leap, whatever it is. So confidence is what turns thoughts into action. And the next slide is, and action gives you more confidence, even if the action doesn't result in a beneficial result, because you learn from the action. And again, this article quotes all the research on this. And as I read that, it was like, God, I've been doing that all my life. That is, in fact, where my confidence comes from. I take action. When I'm really anxious, I actually know that I have to take action. So sometimes the action is just go for a run. You know, it's do something else. Do something physical. Sometimes the action is write something. Sometimes the action is pick up the phone and call them. Sometimes it's really direct, you know, sometimes it's indirect, but the action helps me regain the confidence so I can move forward. Confidence is a belief in one's ability to succeed that stimulates action. That's right out of that article. Action, in turn, stimulates confidence, and it becomes like a virtuous cycle where you keep doing this and you gain confidence. Action, confidence, and you build your confidence. I think I've been doing it all my life. So action increases confidence. That is the magic. And that was the only magic bullet in the whole article. You don't need to get it now. I've told you the whole thing. Okay, so we suffer with not feeling worthy. Okay. Snarky attitudes, always tempting, always wrong. Okay, I run into this all the time, and it actually angers me. So this man is a designer, a well-thought-of designer in San Francisco. His name is Mark Montirno. And he did a Creative Mornings talk, which is titled, Fuck You, Pay Me. Fuck you, pay me. Fuck you, pay me. You know, it's one of those things that when you're like just uptight and angry, it just feels so good to say that. You know, it just is incredible. You just like, but it's so wrong. Because if you've gotten yourself in a circumstance where that's the result, you've already lost. It's over. Fuck you, pay me. You're never going to work with those people again. That's a horrible solution. What you should be doing is understanding the client through the transaction that you have, so you actually are meeting their needs the way they think you promised them, or that you're correcting the misunderstandings as they occur along the way. So this never happens. When I first saw this, I was like thrilled that somebody would say it, because I felt good about saying it myself, you know, because it's feisty, you know. But it's totally wrong. Totally wrong. You should watch the video, though. It's very entertaining. Yes?
So, but this man is going out and talking about it because he's had good experience?
Bad experiences with clients. So it means to me he can't manage his clients, which really means to me he can't manage himself.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So what you could learn from that is do that quietly to yourself and then go and take a positive attitude.
Yeah, you've got a real problem with your client. Let's sit down and sort this out.
Yeah.
Let's try and find some mutuality here. I mean, when we started this relationship, we both had some goals. Maybe we were misunderstanding or something, you know.
Yeah.
But let's sort it out. Yeah, yeah. Don't ever do this. And then this just came across my desk, or my, in basket. Please don't be a dick. So this is another hotshot design firm. I'm sure they're very talented. I'm sure it's a couple of boys. Yeah. And they're talking about their clients, and this is a book of advice to clients. Again, wrong attitude. And there's lots of that in the creative world. It's all bad, it's all wrong. And it'll get you nowhere. That's a little rant on that. Okay, here's where we always go. We always think when things aren't going well, me too, me too. We always think it's about me. I did something wrong. I'm not good enough. I misunderstood. Oh my God, what happened there? Or the bid was too high. They're never going to get back to me. They're going to go with Hornell Anderson. Whatever, whoever. Mostly it's not. That's just our deepest fear. Mostly it's not. And I just had this situation with a client, okay? And this guy is 40 years old, 40-ish. And he was like calling me, and what am I going to do? I put my bid in. It's $27,000. I'm going to do this project for them. I really want to do it because I only have one other client right now, and I have a new baby, and and my wife's not working. and he said, what am I going to do? So I said, well, let's talk about your client. Let's talk about the relationship. Let's talk about what he's dealing with. Well, the client is a young guy who runs this particular program out of Geneva for helping with the camps where all the people are. I forget what we call them. The camps where they put you when your country's gone. Refugee camps. And he's got his own budget, but he reports to a more senior guy who has a separate budget, and that more senior guy is the kind of guy that has the boat on Lake Geneva and takes all the wealthy people out for rides on the boat. And I'm thinking about the poor refugees, all the time. So wait a minute, he's got the 60-foot boat and these people can't eat, But anyway, another subject. So I said, well, are these people phone people, email people, text people? How do they communicate with you? He said, well, the young guy, whose name I forget at the moment, he's somebody I can text. I said, great. And it's 9 hours difference from the West Coast to Geneva. And I said, so let's do a little text campaign, because this thing has just stalled. He'd sent off the proposal, nothing happened. He didn't get a reply. The guy said, I got it, we're reviewing it. A week and a half goes by, he's getting really nervous. He's sure that it's too much money or he's done something wrong. So here's the first text. His name's Chase. Hi, Chase. I'm getting concerned about time. I know you have that June event looming. Have you decided how many interviews I'll need to do? Okay? So it's a very neutral language, totally neutral language. If you want to Google neutral language, by the way, please do that, because it's the language of negotiation where there's no blame nor fault. Neutral language. So neutral language. Hi, Chase. So we're reminding Chase that there is a deadline, and the deadline's in June, and it's a really important one for Chase's career. But we're doing it in a really friendly way, and we're also saying, I want to be able to do a good job here for you, and so I want to know how many interviews. If it's 5 interviews, it's not going to be a problem. If it's 50 interviews, I'm kind of worried about how I'm going to gather all the information. Yes?
But the key thing is that it's implying that I've got the job.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, we're just assuming that we have the job. It's not about me and it's not about money. You've never said anything about money or me. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well put, Sarah. Well put. Yeah. Well put. So here, just because the time difference, so we sent this at like 8 o'clock or so in the morning. The guy was still active, and so he got back. Sorry, Chuck, last week was crazy. I'm on it. Bingo!
He does have the job.
Bingo! Yeah, we got everything we needed just from that little reply. Just from that little reply. But then we wanted to throw in a little extra English on the ball so that the guy doesn't come after our money, okay? So here's what we replied. Also, Chase, I'm a new father and will need time to schedule help for my wife while I'm away. Is that good or what? It's so appropriate, it's so human, it's so real. It says he's a good guy. He wants to make sure his wife is not deserted with this baby.
Don't touch my money.
Don't touch the damn money. Don't touch the damn money. Because I got to feed my baby. Yeah, exactly. Again, in nice neutral language. And this was the next day. I just spoke to Ben. Good news. Your framing is acceptable. Let's talk tomorrow. 5 p.m. Geneva time. That means early morning in Seattle. Yeah. So it worked. But it dealt with those issues of being concerned about not being good enough and it's too much money. Yes?
I wanted to ask about the assumption that he had a job again.
Yes.
I've always had a fear of phrasing things
Right. Well, always good. Always good. Because if they're going to give you bad news, you're going to get the bad news. So just assume that's good news until you actually get bad news. Yeah. Always. Yeah. Yeah. So this kind of thinking is right out of the neutral language idea that I described, and it's also right out of Difficult Conversations, the book. Okay. The concise statement. How are we doing on time? 3:15, 1:15. We got, what, 15 minutes, right?
Easy.
Okay.
Then we can do Q&A. We have the room till 2.
Okay, great. Concise statement. Okay, one of the things I've noticed is that with my clients specifically is knowing how to tightly describe something that they're offering, whatever design services or creative services that they're offering. They can't boil it down to a simple statement that's in the interest of the other party. That's hard to do. So I work with them. That's one of the things I try to do is help them be better at that. And thinking about coming here, I thought, well, I'm going to find some examples of concise statements that would hopefully relate to you guys. But what does a concise statement do? It commands respect because you look like you're master of the information. It commands respect. It helps you close deals. It raises the confidence in you by your opposite because they feel like you know what you're talking about. And then ultimately, concise summaries increase others' belief in you. That's basically what happens. The fact that you can summarize something so succinctly and so clearly, they gain confidence, and so it's a powerful tool for making a deal. And there's these ingredients in a concise statement that I've identified. It's always about positive possibilities. I'm going to show you some examples so you can relate to this, but it's always about positive possibilities. It's best if it has some emotional poignancy, so it feels, good and human and urgent, and urgency. It's like now. So it's poignant and touching, and it's now. It needs to be memorable and obviously confident. And ultimately it's about how you will help the other person, or more brashly, why they should buy what it is you have for sale. And it may be that you have an idea to sell, and maybe it's money, a thing, whatever, but it's basically how you will help them in some way that's important and why they should buy it. And then what it does not have is any smooth dog sales techniques. Sometimes people that are in sales feel uncomfortable with the situation, so they do these weird things like repeat your name too many times. That's a classic one, and it's a kind of a nervous reaction when they're feeling uncomfortable. But it basically creates distance between you and them because you're not being real with me. You're not being a person with me. You're using some technique. I hate that. No corporate or industry jargon. Never ever use jargon. If someone uses jargon on you, turn it back on them and say, "Did you mean to say?" and turn it into regular language. So. The first.
So is it okay to use the word monetize instead of make money?
No, it's not okay. It's not okay. It's like it's all bad. Jargon's just awful. Again, it's a sign of lack of confidence. Do any of you know this illustrator? Lee Conrey? So he did illustrations for the American Weekly for years. Pulp fiction. Pre-World War II, when these publications would come out weekly and they'd print hundreds of thousands, or in Life magazine's case, millions of them every week, before we had the internet, obviously. He was an illustrator, and here's one of his pieces that I pulled up, illustrating a story about house cats attacking someone. My God. This poor guy. Look at his hand. And the cats, of course, are a little bit larger than they would be in real life, just to give us that sense of, what he's facing there. Certain doom, and it's not going to be a pleasant doom either. So I thought I would come up with a concise statement for representing Lee. And here's my concise statement. I compose my illustrations to evoke powerful feelings. They grip you, hold your attention, make you want to know more. If those are the results you want, I can help. If those are the results you want, I can help. So I'm envisioning him talking to an editor. She's one of my heroes. Vera Cassatt. Lovely piece. Great colors. I'm sure the colors have been ruined through the technology. And I wrote, Cassatt Studio puts style in the context of culture and the world we live in. How we dress, live, and socialize. What we eat and watch. Who leads and inspires us. Our followers desire that style. So I'm assuming that she has followers. And of course she does. Cassatt Studio puts style in the context of culture and the world we live in. How we dress, live, and socialize. What we eat and watch. Who leads and inspires us. Our followers desire that style. Any of you know Albert? Albert Dorne? Albert Dorne was the richest illustrator in America. Made more money than Norman Rockwell. They were buddies. He could draw like crazy, and this was during the era of this mass magazine. Magazine covers were all illustrated. I'm sure you've seen that stuff. And Albert Dorne founded the famous artist school. Have you ever heard of the famous artist school? Famous artist school was advertised on matchbooks, and you would open up the matchbook, and there would be a drawing, and you would copy the drawing and send it in. And if you qualified, if your drawing was good enough, called a pre-qualified lead, they would then allow you to pay them $300 to take the famous artist course. And I saved up enough money, and I took the famous artist course. And I still have the books. And they are fabulous books. Fabulous books. And it was the real deal. It was not a scam. And Norman Rockwell was a teacher, and Albert was a teacher, and Ben Shahn was a teacher, and all of the greats from the illustration era were teachers. Saul Bass actually had a stint with famous art schools, a more current figure than these guys. Albert Dorne was a tough guy. He was another one with a very rough childhood. He was a boxer for a while, but he was buddies with Andy Warhol. And one time in a discussion, Andy said to Albert, he said, art must transcend mere drawing. Art must transcend mere drawing. Now, you know, Andy Warhol got his start by doing shoe illustrations for newspaper ads, and then reinvented the art world, which we're still suffering from. Although I'm totally a fan of him, but we are suffering from it. And there's Albert Dorne, and check out the eyebrows. Yeah, that was part of his trademark. I always wondered if they were fake. I'm assuming they are, I don't know. Anyway, there's Albert Dorne. And here's what Albert Dorne said back. There's nothing all that fucking mere about drawing. And so for Albert Dorne, I created, here's the drawing. So this was a tissue fold out in the book, in my famous artist school book. So this was a pencil sketch, and you can just see the drawing. The guy drew and drew and drew. Boy, could he draw. And he was especially good with hands. This one doesn't feature it, but his hands were always exaggerations with hands doing things that they couldn't really do, but you believe it when you see the drawing, you know? Anyway, so for Albert Dorne, I said, I draw. I capture and dramatize the human carnival. I use expression, character, movement, and interaction to tell stories. Millions respond to my work every day. What the hell are you looking for? Do you know Vera Neumann? Vera Neumann, a designer illustrator who changed the world with her commercialization of art on fabrics and basically laid the groundwork for an artist becoming a designer in a commercialized sense. And this is one of her scarves or one of her tablecloths. And her logo was this lovely little script, and she had a little beetle drawing that she liked to have on her stuff too. Yeah, ladybug. And it was just revitalized, so there's now a company selling this stuff. Bright, optimistic, original, thousands of images, each created by Vera's hand, wearable art that changes moods and lightens the soul. Need a lift? Join the revival. By Vera, her spirit lives. Concise, trying to do a concise statement that summarizes the value. So when you're worried about your price, always remember this. People pay extra partly for the privilege of paying extra. Why do they pay so much for those German cars? Oh yeah? Partially because they cost more. Yeah, partially because they cost more. They're certainly lovely cars, but partially because they cost more. Endorsement. Very important when you're negotiating. I'm going to tell you a story. When you are endorsed or recommended, your experience is enhanced. Your expertise is enhanced. It magnifies dramatically. So my first job out of Burnley School was at the Boeing Company in a little design group that was attached to the then turbine division, which made turbine engines, which were used in tanks, of all things, and helicopters. And I worked in this art group, but my wife was pregnant, and I needed extra money, and I also really didn't want to be working at Boeing. I was always looking for freelance opportunities away from Boeing, and my supervisor in the group had a friend who worked for Nicholson Manufacturing, and Nicholson Manufacturing was located kind of by Spokane Street, and they made machines that ate trees. You know, you stick a tree in it, and it's a gigantic machine. It's like the size of a trailer that goes on a big truck, and you stick the tree in one end, and pulp comes out the other end or something. And they had a new machine, and they needed someone to illustrate the machine, and my Boeing supervisor told me it would be a great freelance gig. He'd turned me down on a raise, naturally, but he said, you can go work extra time for these guys and do an illustration. So I packed up my portfolio and got all my stuff and went down to Nicholson Manufacturing and went in the front door. And I can still remember, you know, it's the classic board floor, dirty industrial office, you know, with the kind of craggy receptionist, you know, who screams at people, you know, hey, that kid's here, you know, that kind of thing. And I was shown into a meeting room, and there were, I think, 2 guys in the room waiting for me, and they had all their drawings for the machine all spread out on the table. And I thought, oh, I've got the job. I've got the job. I don't need to show them my illustrations. In fact, if I show them my illustrations, I might lose the job. So I started asking them questions. You know, what were they trying to do with the illustration? How big was it? Did it need to have people in it? Should it be in color or should it be in black and white? How did the machine work? What was special about the machine? I'm making this up now, I don't really remember, but I asked questions. I remember knowing that because they spread the drawings out, that meant that it wasn't me selling myself to them, it was them simply wanting to inform me about their machine so I could do the drawing. So I said, well, that's great. I think it'll probably take me a couple weeks to do it. And the current rate for an illustration like that in Seattle is $1,000. I figured Dick Brown was getting $1,000. He was famous then in Seattle. Many of you probably haven't heard of him. And he was one of my idols. And they didn't blink an eye. That was huge for me. Huge for me. You know, I probably would have asked for $300 and felt lucky. But because they spread the drawings out, I knew. And I had the recommendation of this man from Boeing, who was also had some engineering background, even though he was in charge of an art group, and the two things. So the endorsement's very powerful, but then how you play your hand is incredibly important. So. Have you ever been bludgeoned during a negotiation? Have you ever been bullied during a negotiation? It's really interesting what happens when the other person is unreasonable and they are doing things that are completely, don't make any sense. It happens in the used car world all the time. I'm sure some of you have bought a used car and felt bullied or bludgeoned. I just had a friend down in California who wanted to buy his car at the end of the lease. When you have a lease on a car, apparently the price for what you're going to pay at the end of the lease is set when you buy the car in the first place. So you have a piece of paper that says that when this car is 2 years old or 3 years old or whatever it is, you will pay this much money for if you want to own the car. Or you can just turn it back in. You can pay this much money if you want to own the car, and there'll be sales tax, state of California sales tax, and there's a licensing fee, and those three numbers added up together, that's the number you're going to pay for the car. That's the number. So he's going down I just go down for the ride to chat with David, have a nice afternoon. We go down there, and these guys want an extra $150 over this price. And they spend, more than an hour beating David up over all the reasons why they should get this extra $150. And he's like, keeps going back to, here's the contract, and then they would print out the paperwork. And it had the extra $150. And then they would change it and talk again, and then they'd print out the paperwork again, and it would have this extra $150 in it. Well, finally, he gets the car for the real price with the tax and the license fee. And we leave the dealership, and before we're walking out to his car, which they did wash the car for him, which was nice. We're walking out to the car, and he said, I feel dirty. I feel dirty. Well, they bludgeoned him. And so even though he was completely in the right and totally logical and rational about what he was doing, the very fact that they were claiming otherwise made him feel dirty. So I had one of these here's another short story, a University of Washington student, and she's negotiating on an internship with a design firm that she very much wants to have the internship in because they're doing exactly what she wants to do. She goes down and does an interview. Let's see, do I have an illustration of this? Oh, it'll confuse it. She goes down and is to do the interview, and it's a small firm. There's like 5 people there and the owner, and it's a one-room operation, where there's no conference room, there's no office, there's no private space to discuss anything. She sits at a big conference table in the middle of the studio, and shows her work, and the owner just praises her and says, I want to have you here, great. Offers her a job on the spot. The interview's like 20 minutes long, and she's thrilled, but then she goes away and he said, we'll talk about the pay for the internship through email. Well, she knows that University of Washington design graduates are getting $20 an hour for an internship situation. And he sends her an email saying, I'll pay you $10 an hour. So half what all of her co-graduates are going to get. And so we talk about it, and I said, he didn't even look at your work. He didn't even give you any feedback on your work. Let's engage him in a conversation. So there's no place to meet there. Let's ask to meet at a coffee shop, and let's engage him in a conversation where you can get feedback on your work, because that's part of what this is about. You're young, you're starting out, you want a professional opinion on your work. You want to gain some insights from this. It's not just about money for you. You also would like to know what would be expected of you in this internship. What will you be doing? What will be expected of you? So I said, let's make a list of questions for you, and you send him, you get him on the phone, you send him an email, set up a phone call, because we don't negotiate through email ever. Set up a phone call, and on the phone call, tell him that you'd like to meet in a coffee shop, and there's one close to him, and would that be ask him if that's a good place to meet. And the reason, of course, is this is private, and I would like to get some feedback on my work and so on. So she does the email, he agrees to take her phone call, she calls him, and on the phone, he again praises her work, but not with specifics, just, oh, you're fabulous, oh, your work is fabulous, and agrees to have the coffee shop meeting. And she's thrilled. She had the courage to set it up, make the phone call. It worked. He said he's going to meet her and then he sends an email, bang, after that, and says, if you think you're going to use that meeting to get more money from me, I can get people like you for free. So obviously, end of conversation, more or less. So she said to me on the phone, she said, I felt like I did something wrong. I felt like I did something wrong. He bludgeoned her. That was bludgeoning. That was bullying. But it draws out this feeling of, I must be at fault here. I'll give you one last story on...
Did she meet with him, or she...
No, it was over. Deal's over. But, so we failed in getting our ultimate goal, but what we decided what we won was, by keeping the conversation open longer, she got him to reveal what kind of an employer he was going to be. So ultimately we won because by keeping the dialogue going, we learned a whole bunch more about him. Okay, one last bludgeoning story. Client of mine in Chicago gets an opportunity to revitalize a grand old American brand. Big assignment for him, thrilling assignment. And sends in his proposal, they approve it, they start the strategy phase. He's presenting the strategy to his client in a big conference room in a high-rise in Chicago. They're loving the strategy. They're saying everything's perfect here. We're going to go with this thing. We're talking a couple $100,000. It's a big deal. And then his client guy says, oh, by the way, the guy from purchasing needs to talk to you about your contract. He's going to call in. He's going to call in. Purchasing agent calls in from a bad cell phone from his automobile. He said, I'm in a terrible hurry here. We've just bought another company, and I've got to do a whole bunch of stuff there, and we're expanding into Europe now, and when this brand launches, we're going to change the world, and I'm powerful and important, and you're nothing. And by the way, your terms are totally inappropriate for us, and we will pay you 180 days after you complete the work. We will pay you 180 days after you complete. Here he is. Here's my client. He's done the strategy work. He's just presented. He's worked for a month with his team. And here this guy is like, and my client was so off balance that he agreed. He was bludgeoned into agreeing. He was bludgeoned into agreeing. So that's bludgeoning. So what do you do when somebody bludgeons you? Anybody got a suggestion? I want to know. Okay.
You stop. You somehow stop. You stop yourself from saying okay. You say nothing if you have to say nothing, but you stop yourself from saying, oh, all right.
Very good, Sarah.
My
Give
dad
yourself
said
a
the same
chance to
thing
think.
when
Yes.
like, doing negotiating for a car.
Yes.
There was one time where he basically just lets the people talk, and they told the story about how they have to keep the lights on and all these other reasons why we need to pay more, and you just let them talk, and the silence carries them through to a more reasonable situation.
Yep.
I don't know if that applies here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else? Well, when somebody's being unreasonable, you can't really deal with them, so you have to withdraw. You have to withdraw. You have to. The thing that's most important is recognizing what's happening, because what happens is your emotions are raging, and if you're not cognizant of that, you can fall into the trap that my client in Chicago did and just roll over, which is quite common in the design world. Very common. Creative people rolling over happens all the time. And so what you have to be is aware that this is happening, so you have the wit about you to actually leave the table. You just have to be aware of it. So you have to say, what's going on here? Wait a minute, $150, this is ridiculous. Leave the table. So David could have just gotten up and said, I'm going to call the Infinity Division manager and I'll deal with him.
I'm going to ask if you can step away and then re-engage someone that's...
Yes, more authority or somebody over there or whatever, right, yeah. But step away, you've got to not let, because what it has this effect on us. That's the point I'm trying to make. When we're talking about it in this room and there's no emotions raging, it's kind of hard to imagine, but when you're in it, it happens.
As a matter of fact, if your heart is pounding...
That's a good time to say nothing while you think.
Right. This is a sign that this is important and I'm not feeling particularly good about it. I need to withdraw.